The day fear was invented. Nothing in the universe had ever made them afraid. Not the collapse of stars. Not the slow death of galaxies. Not even each other. The Zalvorith Dominion had ruled for so long that the concept of fear had faded into myth, filed away alongside extinct species and failed rebellions. They were the final word in evolution, a civilization that had crushed thousands of others without ever encountering resistance worthy of memory. War, to them, was administrative. A fleet would arrive. A demand would be issued. Compliance would follow, or annihilation. There were no surprises. No uncertainty. No consequences. Until the transmission. It arrived without warning, cutting across secured Dominion channels with the subtlety of a knife through silk. No encryption breach alarms. No traceable origin. Just a signal. A voice. Human. You have exactly 72 hours to withdraw from the Sol system. Silence filled the war chamber. Then laughter. Deep, layered, multi-throated laughter echoed across the obsidian walls as commanders exchanged amused glances. The high strategist leaned forward, tendrils flickering with amusement. Replay it. The message repeated. Calm. Measured. Almost polite. You have exactly 72 hours to withdraw from the Sol system. One of the lesser tacticians hissed. A primitive species issuing threats. Fascinating. Sol system. Another added. Designation, insignificant. 1 mid-sized star. 8 planets. 1 developing civilization. Humans, said the strategist. Ah, yes. The noisy ones. Nuclear capable. Barely space-faring. A pause. Then a smirk crept into his voice. They believe they can threaten us. The room erupted again. Send a reply, he ordered. Something appropriate. A junior officer nodded and transmitted the response within seconds. You misunderstand your position. You are not in control of this situation. Moments later, the human replied. Yeah. That's what the last Empire said. The laughter stopped. Not entirely, but it changed. Softer. Sharper. Predatory. The strategist tilted his head. Trace that signal. Already attempting, high strategist, but what? It's everywhere. A flicker of irritation crossed his features. Explain. The officer swallowed. The signal isn't coming from a single point. It's embedded. Across our entire network. Every relay. Every channel. It's as if. As if what? As if they're already inside. Silence returned. This time it stayed. 72 hours later, the Dominion fleet entered the Sol system. They came in overwhelming force, thousands of warships blotting out the stars, their hulls shimmering with energy fields that had never once failed. Planets had surrendered at the mere sight of such a formation. Earth did not. Instead, the humans broadcast something new. Music. Loud. Chaotic. Primitive. Drums and distorted strings and voices screaming defiance into the void. What is this? One commander demanded. Psychological warfare? Another guessed. The strategist observed in silence. No, he said finally. It's ritualistic. On the main display, Earth rotated slowly. Blue. Fragile. Insignificant. Begin the demonstration, he ordered. A single Dominion ship broke formation and fired. The beam lanced across space, perfect, precise, unstoppable. It never reached the planet. Halfway there it bent. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Bent. As if space itself had twisted. The beam curved upward, looping in an impossible arc, before slamming back into the firing vessel. The ship vanished in a flash of white. No explosion. No debris. Just gone. For the first time in recorded Dominion history, a commander hesitated. Repeat the attack, the strategist said, his voice suddenly colder. 3 ships fired. 3 beams. 3 impossible curves. 3 ships erased from existence. The music got louder. "What are they doing?" the tactician whispered. "Adapting," another replied. "No," said the strategist slowly. "Not adapting." He leaned closer to the display. They prepared. Before anyone could respond, a news signal cut through the chamber. Same voice. Same human. "You should have listened." The strategist's tendrils stiffened. "Explain what just occurred." A pause. Then, almost casually, "We weaponized physics." Confusion rippled through the room. "That's impossible," someone muttered. The human chuckled. "Yeah. That's what we thought too." Hours passed. The Dominion launched probes. Drones. Long-range scans. Every attempt to analyze Earth failed. Sensors returned contradictions, impossible readings, shifting constants, space behaving like liquid, time jittering at the edges of perception. One probe transmitted a final image before vanishing. It showed Earth. And something behind it. Something vast. Something watching. "High strategist," an officer said carefully. "We recommend withdrawal." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The strategist turned slowly. "Withdrawal," he repeated. "Yes. From a pre-FTL species. They are no longer pre-FTL. They have no fleet. They don't need one." Silence. Then, "Explain." The officer swallowed. "We believe humanity has converted their entire system into a weapon." A ripple of unease spread across the chamber. "That's absurd." "Yes, high strategist. And it's the only explanation." The strategist stared at Earth. At the blue world that should have been easy. At the species that should have surrendered. At the impossible. "Prepare a full assault," he said at last. "High strategist. All ships. All weapons. Simultaneous strike." A pause. Then, reluctantly, "Yes, sir." The fleet fired. Thousands of beams. Missiles. Exotic weapons that had ended civilizations. Space lit up like a dying star. And then, everything stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. Time froze across the battlefield. Except for one thing. A single human ship. Small. Crude. Laughably insignificant. It drifted through the frozen storm of weapons like a ghost. Straight toward the Dominion flagship. Inside the war chamber, the strategist felt something he did not recognize. Not yet. But it was close. The human ship docked. No resistance. No defense. Just inevitability. Moments later, the chamber doors opened. And a man walked in. No armor. No weapons. Just a worn leather jacket and a tired expression. He looked around at the gathered commanders and sighed. "Man," he said, scratching his head, "you guys really don't know when to quit." No one moved. No one spoke. Because they couldn't. Time was still frozen. Except for him. He walked up to the strategist, studying him like a curious animal. "You're the boss, right?" Silence. The man nodded to himself. "Yeah. You've got that look." He leaned in slightly. "Let me explain something real simple." A faint smile crossed his face. "You weren't supposed to find us." Something cold curled in the strategist's mind. The man continued. "We stayed quiet for a reason. We saw what you did to everyone else. Watched you wipe out entire species like it was paperwork." His smile faded. "And we decided, nah." A pause. Then softly. "Not us." The strategist felt it now. That unfamiliar sensation. Sharp. Heavy. Unavoidable. Fear. Time snapped back. Weapons resumed their paths. But they never reached Earth. Instead, every single shot turned, just like before. Only this time, they didn't return to their source. They scattered. Across the fleet. Thousands of ships. Thousands of impacts. The Dominion Armada collapsed in seconds. Explosions bloomed like a field of dying stars. Screams filled the comms. Systems failed. Order dissolved into chaos. And through it all, the human voice returned. Broadcast across every channel. Calm. Unshaken. You had 72 hours. The strategist watched his empire burn. For the first time in his existence, he understood. This wasn't war. It was a lesson. And they were failing it. The human stood beside him, hands in his pockets, watching the destruction with quiet indifference. You're lucky, the man said. The strategist managed to speak, his voice trembling despite himself. Lucky? The human nodded. Yeah. We're in a good mood today. A faint grin. Usually, we don't give second chances. The strategist stared at him. At the impossible being who had walked through frozen time. Who had turned physics into a weapon. Who had dismantled a fleet without lifting a finger. What are you? He whispered. The human chuckled. Just people. He turned toward the exit. People who got tired of being afraid. A pause. Then, without looking back. And figured out how to make everyone else feel it instead. As the last Dominion ships burned, one truth became undeniable. For the first time in the history of the galaxy, fear had been invented. And humanity had written the definition. The things they buried. The Dominion did not retreat. Not at first. Empires like theirs didn't bend, they recalibrated. Losses were processed, doctrines rewritten, failures buried beneath layers of strategic language that made catastrophe sound like inconvenience. But this was not a loss. This was humiliation. Entire battle groups erased in seconds. Weapons turned against their own creators. A single human walking through frozen time as if reality itself had signed a contract with him. And worst of all, fear had spread. Quietly. Invisibly. Like a disease no one wanted to name. What we witnessed was not warfare, the high strategist said, his voice steadier now, though something behind it had cracked. It was an anomaly. The chamber had been rebuilt. Larger. Reinforced. As if thicker walls could keep the memory out. It can be studied, he continued. Understood. Countered. A senior warlord leaned forward. With respect, we've reviewed all data. There is no consistent physics model explaining what occurred in the Sol system. Then create one. We tried. And? It breaks. Silence. The strategist's tendrils twitched, irritation creeping back in. Everything breaks under sufficient pressure. Apply more. They did. The Dominion didn't send another fleet. They sent everything else. Probes layered with quantum shielding. AI constructs designed to think in nonlinear patterns. Sleeper agents seeded into fringe systems near human space. Signals disguised as cosmic background radiation. They stopped treating humanity like an enemy. They started treating them like a phenomenon. Weeks passed. Then came the first Rio report. High strategist, an intelligence officer said, voice low. We've recovered something. The strategist didn't look up. From where? A dead relay station. Outer Rim. It shouldn't have been there. That got his attention. Define shouldn't. The officer hesitated. It predates us. The chamber stilled. Impossible. Yes, high strategist. That's what we thought. Show me. The projection flickered to life. A structure hung in space, ancient, fractured, barely holding itself together. Its architecture was unlike any known species. Not Dominion. Not allied. Not conquered. Unknown. What is its function? The strategist asked. We believe it's a warning system. A ripple of unease passed through the chamber. A warning, for what? The officer swallowed. For humanity. The data logs were fragmented. Corrupted. Time-worn. But one file had survived. Barely. The audio crackled as it played. A voice, not human. Not Dominion. Something older. Tired. If you are hearing this, then they have found you. Static. They were not meant to be discovered. We hid them. Buried them beneath layers of isolation, hoping, praying, they would never reach this stage again. A pause. If they have, then it is already too late. The strategist's gaze hardened. Explain they. The recording continued. They call themselves humans. Silence tightened like a noose. We thought them primitive, violent, self-destructive. All the signs of a species that would burn itself out before reaching the stars. A faint, bitter sound, almost laughter. We were wrong. The chamber felt smaller, colder. What is this? The strategist demanded. A relic, the officer replied. From a civilization we have no record of conquering. Then we missed one. No, the officer said quietly. They didn't fall to us. A pause. They fell to humanity. No one spoke. Because that was impossible. Humanity had only recently emerged. Barely left their system. Still arguing over borders and resources like every other young species. They couldn't have destroyed an advanced civilization. Not unless. When is this recording dated? The strategist asked. The officer hesitated. Approximately 9 million years ago. The silence that followed was absolute. That's absurd, one of the warlords snapped. Humans didn't exist 9 million years ago. They shouldn't have, the officer agreed. But the data suggests otherwise. The recording resumed. We tried to contain them, limit their growth, influence their evolution. Static hissed. It worked. For a while. The voice grew weaker. But they always come back. A long pause. Stronger. Smarter. Angrier. The strategist felt it again. That cold, creeping sensation. Fear. He crushed it. This is fabrication, he said. A psychological attack. Possibly, the officer said. But there's more. Of course there is. We found coordinates embedded in the signal. And they lead inside human territory. The strategist's eyes narrowed. A trap. Most likely. A long pause. Prepare a stealth reconnaissance unit. This time, they didn't send a fleet. They sent ghosts. A single ship. No emissions. No signatures. Designed to exist between scans, between thoughts. It slipped into the Sol system undetected. Or so they believed. Entering outer boundary. The pilot whispered. Proceed. Came the strategist's voice over the secure channel. The ship drifted past Pluto. No resistance. Past Neptune. Nothing. Past Uranus. Wait, the navigator said. What is it? There's something here. Define something. A pause. Structures. The display flickered. And there they were. Not ships. Not stations. Graves. Thousands of them. Massive constructs, drifting in perfect formation. Each one marked with symbols the Dominion couldn't translate. Are these human? The pilot asked. No, the navigator said slowly. They're older. Scan them, the strategist ordered. We are. And? They're empty. A beat. Mostly. One of the structures lit up. Just for a second. A flicker. Like an eye-opening. Did you see that? The pilot whispered. Yes, the navigator replied. Explain it. I can't. The ship moved closer. One of the structures rotated slowly, as if acknowledging their presence. Then, a signal. Not from Earth. From the graveyard. The same human voice. Calm. Amused. You guys really don't learn, do you? The pilot froze. How? You're about 0.3 light seconds from something you definitely don't want to wake up. Silence. Recommend you turn around. The strategist's voice cut in, sharp and controlled. Continue forward. The human sighed. Yeah. That tracks. The ship advanced. Closer. Closer. One of the structures moved. Not drifting. Moving. Deliberately. High strategist, the navigator said, panic creeping in. These aren't structures. A pause. There's ships. The graveyard woke up. Lights flickered across ancient hulls. Systems hummed back to life after eons of silence. One by one. Hundreds. Then thousands. The human voice returned. This was your last warning. A beat. You're not the first empire to think we were easy. The pilot's hands trembled. What are these? A soft chuckle echoed through the comms. Proof. Proof of what? A pause. Then, proof that we've done this before. The first ancient ship fired. Not at Earth. At them. The stealth vessel didn't even have time to scream. It vanished. Erased with surgical precision. Back in the Dominion war chamber, the feed cut to black. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. They're lying, one warlord said weakly. It's a trick. The strategist didn't respond. Because for the first time, he wasn't sure. The recording from the ancient relay station played again. They always come back. The strategist closed his eyes. Stronger. Smarter. Angrier. He opened them slowly. Prepare the full archives, he said. The chamber stirred. For what purpose? An officer asked. His voice was quiet. Controlled. But something inside it had changed. Because, he said, we are no longer dealing with a species. A pause. Then, we are dealing with a cycle. Far away, in the Sol system, the man in the leather jacket stood on a quiet balcony overlooking Earth. The war was already over. At least, this version of it. He took a slow breath, watching the sunrise creep across the horizon. Behind him, a voice spoke. You think they'll stop? He didn't turn around. No. A small smile tugged at his lips. They never do. Another pause. And us? He finally looked back. At the shadows moving in the room behind him. At things that didn't quite look human. At echoes of something older. Something buried. His smile faded. We finish it, he said. Soft. Certain. Same as last time. The war that already happened. The Dominion did something it had not done in over 10,000 cycles. It panicked. Not openly, of course. Not in the way lesser species collapsed into chaos and self-destruction. The Zalvorith were far too disciplined for that. But panic has many forms. It hides in overcorrection. In silence. In the sudden need to know everything, immediately. And for the first time in their history. They didn't. Search everything, the high strategist ordered. Every archive. Every conquered system. Every erased civilization. His voice was steady. Too steady. I want any mention of humanity. Any anomaly. Any unexplained extinction event. The chamber responded with sharp acknowledgments. Orders rippled across the Dominion like a shockwave. For the first time, they weren't preparing for war. They were digging for ghosts. Days passed. Then the reports began. At first, they were small things. Fragments. Inconsistencies. A dead world that shouldn't have been dead. A species that had vanished without a trace. No war signatures, no environmental collapse, no known cause. Then patterns emerged. And the patterns pointed to one thing. Or rather, one absence. This system, an intelligence officer said, projecting a map of a distant cluster, was catalogued as thriving 4.2 million cycles ago. The display shifted. Then, abruptly, nothing. No debris? A warlord asked. None. No distress signals? None. No evidence of Dominion involvement? None. A pause. So what happened? The officer hesitated. We don't know. Another report followed. And this one? Similar. Advanced civilization. Interstellar capability. Disappeared in under a standard cycle. No enemy signatures? No. Internal conflict? No. A longer pause. Survivors? The officer's voice dropped. One. The chamber leaned in. Where is it? Recovered. Contained. The strategist's eyes narrowed. Bring it. The survivor wasn't what they expected. It wasn't a warrior. Or a leader. Or anything important. Just a civilian. Small. Fragile. Its species clearly not built for war. It trembled as it was brought into the chamber, its eyes darting across the towering forms of the Dominion elite. Translate, the strategist ordered. The device hummed. The creature spoke. At first, it didn't make sense. They came back, they always come back. Its voice shook, breaking under the weight of memory. We thought we were alone, we thought it was over. The strategist leaned forward. Who came back? The creature's gaze snapped to him. And for a moment, just a moment, it looked like it wasn't seeing him at all. Like it was seeing something else. Something worse. Humans. A ripple moved through the chamber. The strategist's tone sharpened. Describe them. The creature let out a weak, broken laugh. You don't describe them. Try. They look like you expect. A pause. Until they don't. What did they do to your world? A warlord demanded. The creature went silent. Then, they apologized. Confusion flickered across the room. Apologized? The creature nodded slowly. They said they didn't want to do it again. A chill spread through the chamber. Do what? The creature's voice dropped to a whisper. And us. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. What happened next? The strategist asked. The creature closed its eyes. We laughed. A long pause. That was a mistake. The chamber held its breath. They asked us to stop expanding, to stay within our system, to limit ourselves. A faint tremor ran through its body. We refused. Of course they did. Every species did. Expansion was survival. It was instinct. It was inevitable. What happened next? The strategist repeated. The creature opened its eyes. And this time, there was no confusion. No fear. Just certainty. They showed us why they stopped. The room felt colder. How? Someone whispered. The creature smiled. A small, broken thing. They turned everything off. Explain. No weapons. No fleets. No invasion. A pause. Just off. The strategist's mind raced. Define off. The creature tilted its head. As in, gone. A beat. Stars stopped burning. That got their attention. That's impossible. A warlord snapped. Yes. The creature agreed softly. We said that too. They didn't destroy us. It continued. They erased the conditions that let us exist. A long silence followed. They dimmed our star. The chamber erupted. That's absurd. Stars cannot be. The energy requirements alone. Silence. The strategist's voice cut through the chaos. Cold. Precise. Terrified. Continue. The creature nodded weakly. Our world froze. Our systems failed. Our fleets went dark. Its voice cracked. We thought it was a natural disaster. A pause. Until they spoke again. The room leaned in. What did they say? The strategist asked. The creature swallowed. They said. Its voice dropped to barely a whisper. This is the mercy version. No one spoke. Because suddenly, everything made sense. They weren't fighting wars, the strategist said slowly. They were resetting them. The chamber turned toward him. What? He stood. Mind racing. Pieces locking into place. The ruins. The disappearances. The lack of conflict evidence. A pause. They didn't conquer those civilizations. Another pause. They removed them. Why? A warlord demanded. The strategist looked at the projection of Earth. At the small, blue world that had somehow become the center of everything. Because they've done this before. Silence. And they remember how it ends. Far away, in the Sol system, the man in the leather jacket stood in a dimly lit room. Screens flickered around him, data streams, star maps, timelines layered over timelines. Behind him, the shadows moved again. Not quite human. Not entirely something else. You showed them, one of the shadows said. His voice was tired. Yeah. They're starting to understand. A pause. They always do. One of the screens flashed. A Dominion fleet mobilizing. Larger than before. Smarter. Careful. They're adapting, another shadow noted. Of course they are. The man rubbed his face. That's what makes this part so annoying. Do we stop them? The shadow asked. The man was quiet for a long moment. Then, no. The shadows shifted. No? He shook his head. They need to see it. See what? He looked up. At the stars. At the endless spread of civilizations, empires, ambitions. At the pattern that never changed. The end. Back in the Dominion war chamber, the strategist made his decision. We do not retreat. Murmurs spread. We do not surrender. More murmurs. We escalate. Silence. They want us to be afraid. He continued. To hesitate. To limit ourselves. His gaze hardened. We will not. Prepare the null array. The chamber froze. Even the warlords hesitated. High strategist, that weapon is unstable. Yes. It could collapse entire sectors. Yes. It has never been used at full capacity. Then this will be the first time. A pause. Heavy. Dangerous. Target? An officer asked. The strategist didn't hesitate. Sol. Far away, the man in the leather jacket watched the notification appear. He sighed. Yeah, he muttered. Here we go again. The shadows behind him grew still. What happens now? One asked. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for something on the table. An old object. Simple. Out of place. A photograph. It showed Earth. Different. Older. And standing in the foreground. Not one human. But many. Different uniforms. Different eras. All of them him. They think this is a war, he said finally. A faint, humorless smile crossed his face. It's not. He set the photo down. It's a loop. The Dominion prepared to fire a weapon that could tear apart reality. Humanity prepared to do something worse. And somewhere, buried deep beneath time itself, something ancient began to wake up. Something even the humans had once feared. For the first time in millions of years, the cycle was about to break. The last time it happens. The Dominion fired first. They had to. Empires like theirs didn't wait for endings, they forced them. The null array came alive in silence. No light. No sound. No dramatic surge of power. Just absence. A sphere of nothingness bloomed at the center of the Dominion formation, expanding outward like a thought erasing itself. Space folded inward, matter unraveled, and even the concept of distance began to collapse. Stars bent toward it. Time stuttered. Reality hesitated. Impact in 3 seconds, an officer whispered. No one in the chamber moved. No one breathed. For the first time in Dominion history, they were witnessing a weapon they didn't fully understand. And for the second time, they were using it anyway. 2 seconds. The projection of the Sol system warped as the expanding void approached. Planets stretched into thin lines. Orbits twisted. Light itself struggled to escape. Earth remained at the center. Still. Unmoving. Waiting. 1 second. The high strategist leaned forward. Not with confidence. Not with certainty. But with something far more dangerous. Hope. Then the void touched the edge of the system. And everything stopped. Not froze. Not slowed. Stopped. In a way that made the last encounter feel like a child's trick. The null array didn't collapse. It didn't fail. It simply ceased to exist, as if something had reached into the equation and removed it. Cleanly. Permanently. The strategist felt it again. That cold, suffocating realization. No, he whispered. Across every Dominion system, alarms began to scream. Not warnings. Not damage reports. Something worse. Corrections. High strategist! An officer shouted. We're losing systems. Define losing. They're reverting. The main display flickered wildly. Star charts shifted. Borders redrew themselves. Entire fleets vanished. What is happening? A warlord demanded. No one answered. Because the answer was already in front of them. The Sol system was no longer alone. It was layered. Multiple versions of itself overlapping like reflections in broken glass. Different eras. Different wars. Different outcomes. All existing at once. And at the center of it. Him. The man in the leather jacket. Standing on nothing. Surrounded by everything. His voice cut through every channel. Calm. Tired. Final. We tried it your way. The strategist stared at him, trembling. What are you doing? The man sighed. Ending it. The shadows behind him stepped forward. Not shadows anymore. Not quite human either. Versions. Fragments. Echoes of humanity across time. Soldiers. Scientists. Survivors. All of them carrying the same weight. All of them remembering. You keep asking the same question. The man continued. What are we? A faint smile. Wrong question. He looked up. At the collapsing layers of reality. At the war that had been fought 1,000 times in 1,000 ways. At the civilizations that had risen. And fallen. Over and over again. The real question is. He met the strategist's gaze. Why do you all keep making us do this? The Dominion fleet began to flicker. Ships phasing in and out of existence. Some reverting to earlier states, primitive, unfinished. Others skipping ahead, destroyed, burned out husks. We gave you a choice, the man said. Every time. His voice hardened. You expand. You conquer. You push until something pushes back. A pause. And every time, it's us. The strategist's composure finally broke. This is madness. You're rewriting reality. Yeah, the man cut in. We noticed you don't learn the first few times. The chamber shook as parts of it simply disappeared. Not destroyed. Removed. Like they had never been built. We tried hiding, the man continued. We tried warning you. Images flashed across the layered space. Ancient relay stations. Dead civilizations. Graveyards of ships. We even tried mercy. The strategist flinched. The memory of the dimmed star burned in his mind. But you don't stop, the man said quietly. You never stop. So this time. He exhaled slowly. We're not fixing the war. The strategist's voice shook. Then what are you doing? The man looked at Earth. At the countless versions of it. Peaceful. Ruined. Thriving. Dead. We're removing the cause. Silence. Absolute. Us? The strategist whispered. The man tilted his head. Not just you. A pause. Everyone. The Dominion chamber erupted into chaos. That's extinction. That's genocide. That's Tuesday, the man said flatly. The word hit harder than any weapon. You don't get it, he continued. This isn't revenge. A long pause. It's maintenance. Reality began to collapse inward. Not violently. Not catastrophically. But deliberately. Controlled. Stars dimmed. Systems blinked out. Civilizations, thousands, millions, simply ceased. The strategist fell to his knees. Please! The word came out broken. Unfamiliar. There has to be another way. The man watched him. For a long time. Yeah, he said softly. There was. He stepped closer. Not as an enemy. Not as a god. Just a man. You had 72 hours. The strategist closed his eyes. And for the first time in his existence, he understood. This wasn't a war. It was a consequence. The man turned away. The shadows, no, the other humans, stood with him. All of them facing the same direction. All of them ready. Wait, the strategist whispered. The man paused. What happens after? The strategist asked. A long silence followed. Then the man glanced back. And for the first time, there was something different in his expression. Not anger. Not exhaustion. Something, almost human. We try again. And then, everything ended. No explosion. No darkness. No final scream. Just nothing. And then, a sound. Wind. A sky. Blue. Clean. Untouched. A world. Earth. A man stood on a quiet hill, wearing a worn leather jacket. He took a slow breath, looking out over a world that had never known war. No empires. No dominion. No ancient cycles. Just humanity. Behind him, a voice called out. Hey! You coming or what? He turned. A woman stood by an old truck, smirking. Normal. Entirely, beautifully normal. Yeah, he said. He took one last look at the sky. At the stars that no longer remembered. And for the first time in a very long time, he smiled. Far beyond that sky, in places that no longer existed, something stirred. A faint echo. A question without an answer. Why? But there was no one left to ask it. Because this time, humanity didn't just win the war. They made sure it never happened.